Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, we have a ton of news stories to get into today, and let's start off talking about Becky Lynch. Because Becky Lynch, her return to WWE is getting nearer and nearer and closer and closer. It looks like the man's return is on the horizon because Becky Lynch was reportedly training in the ring at the WWE Performance Center this past week. Now, it was noted by PW Insider that Lynch's visit was described as part of the process for her return to action for the company. Now, she was seen working in the ring with NXT Women's Tag Team Champion Indy Hartwell. Now, Fightful Select, which of course is their Patreon service, be sure to check that out and subscribe to them. They've also released an additional report that adds that Lynch was visiting the Performance Center on Thursday this week. So we have a specific day. It was actually only a couple of days ago that Becky Lynch was at the Performance Center. Now, besides just training, Lynch was also at the Performance Center to watch some of the WWE PC live matches that have been going on this week between talents. She was also expected to be at last night's SmackDown on Fox taping, but obviously wasn't booked to appear on the actual broadcast. She didn't appear, but she was said to be backstage at the Thunderdome in the Youngling Center in Tampa Bay, Florida. Now, if you're not aware, the WWE Performance Center live shows are in-house events featuring NXT and developmental talents competing in the ring. It's essentially what WWE has come up with now that they don't have NXT live events or that kind of stuff. So they have to have some kind of method or way to have these talents actually still having matches in front of somewhat of a live audience. So they've done these WWE PC live shows, which are essentially NXT house shows. They do them at the Performance Center. Now, several WWE executives, coaches, and producers were together last week to watch practice matches and the actual PC live event. This included the likes of John Laurinaitis, Bruce Pritchard, Canyon Seaman, Jamie Noble, and Matt Bloom. Now, regarding Becky Lynch, it was noted by multiple sources talking to Fightful that she looked, quote, jacked and like she never left the company while training inside the ring. We've seen some recent pictures and images, haven't we, of Becky Lynch talking about how great shape she was. You'd have never known that she was away. She looks to be in absolutely phenomenal shape. Now, it was noted that several female superstars on the WWE main roster of Raw and SmackDown have hoped for Lynch to return, as it means the booking will likely improve for them. Now, WWE officials, they've been hopeful at multiple points this year for Lynch to return, or at the very least make appearances, but obviously that hasn't since happened. Now, Becky Lynch did recently sign a new WWE contract. She has been away from WWE since relinquishing the Raw Women's Championship in May of 2020. She gave birth to a baby girl with fiancé Seth Rollins back in December last year and is expected to be back in action for WWE at any point, at any time now. So the man is going to be coming back around very, very quickly, it looks like. And to be honest, not a moment too soon, frankly. Again, the images that we have seen of Becky Lynch recently, she looks to be in phenomenal shape, and she could show up, on Monday Night Raw Monday if she wanted to. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the likely outcome, and this is kind of the theme for this video. You've probably seen it on the thumbnail, but all of these returns, whether it's Becky Lynch, Bray Wyatt, Edge, etc., John Cena, of course, coming at SummerSlam as well later on in August, is that WWE, of course, they're returning to touring in July, and as they get in front of that live audience and as they have tickets that they need to shift and sell, they're getting some of these talents back on television, one being Becky Lynch. So I don't think Becky Lynch is going to show up, say, at Hell in a Cell on Sunday. I know there are some people saying, well, maybe these are like the final hoops she has to go through before she returns on Sunday. I would just be really surprised with that. I truly would. I think the most likely outcome is that if Becky Lynch is going to return, it's going to be on that Friday. Was it July 16? Is when that first live SmackDown is in terms of a live audience. It's either on that SmackDown, Money in the Bank on Sunday, or Raw on Monday. That's where Becky Lynch is going to show up. Frankly, we don't know what brand she's on. She wasn't drafted to a brand in the last WWE draft. Of course, previously she was on Raw. She was the Raw Women's Champion, but she hasn't been drafted to a brand since. So she can really appear wherever she wants. So I know some people are saying, oh, she's going to go back to Raw. Who says that? Who says she's going to go back to Raw? Maybe she goes to SmackDown. So who knows? So the wheels are certainly in motion for Becky Lynch's return. The fact that she's training inside the ring with talent, she's going through the process of returning to in-ring action, gives you the impression that she is very much going to be on WWE television very, very soon. Again, I would suggest, and this is a prediction, but I just don't know, and I could be wrong. And if I am, clip it, embarrass me, go right ahead. But I think it's most likely a situation where she probably shows up in July, either at that SmackDown on Fox in front of the live crowd, Money in the Bank on the Sunday, or Raw on the Monday. They could have us show up at Hell in a Cell. They could have us show up on Raw on Monday or SmackDown the following Friday in the Thunderdome. Just where's the reaction? Where's the reaction there? What's the point? Those Thunderdome shows at this point, they're redundant. Everyone's already looking forward and looking ahead to those July editions of SmackDown or Raw or Money in the Bank or SummerSlam in August. Everyone's already looking forward to that. Everyone's already thinking about that. Even, the consumer at home, they're not even paying attention to the product right now because they're thinking, I'll check back in July once live fans return. So I think WWE, they want to create moments. That's what they always live for, right? They live for moments and reactions from crowd. Why would you waste, really, why would you waste having Becky Lynch return inside of an empty arena when you could do it in front of a full arena? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? The option, the answer there is very easy. Becky Lynch should return when there's a crowd of people present. Easy, end of. There's no discussion really about it. So I think that's probably going to be the case. So I expect Becky Lynch to return in July, and again, this is just part of the process facilitating her WWE return. Now, speaking of returns to WWE programming, The Fiend and Edge, they're also set to return as WWE goes back on the road in terms of touring. Now, The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, is apparently returning to WWE action this summer. WWE is currently selling tickets for their return to touring, and The Fiend is on a local advertisement for the August 9 Raw in the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida. This is according to Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp. Now, it's very possible that The Fiend is being advertised in other ticket alerts that are being sent out locally, and obviously if we find that out, we will let you know. Now, Bray Wyatt, of course, hasn't been seen since losing to Randy Orton at WrestleMania 37. Now, he lost that match, did appear on the following night's edition of Monday Night Raw, since he was double-crossed, turned on by Alexa Bliss, and we haven't seen him since. Now, it was noted last week via PW Insider that Wyatt is purposely being kept off WWE television right now, but for an unknown reason. It is not the case of Bray Wyatt having heat or anything, as he's well liked in the company, but there is no word on why he hasn't been brought back yet. Now, Wyatt being advertised for the August 9 Raw show could be a sign that he's in the plans for the SummerSlam pay-per-view on August 21st. Now, it must be said, and frankly, it feels quite nice to get back to this point, because I remember the days where, again, people tried to figure out what plans were when it came to local advertisements. We haven't done this for so long. Now, I know some people will roll their eyes at this and say, oh, but it's a local advertisement, it's a card subject to change, all that kind of stuff. That's very true. The only thing I would say about that is it's not like it was before where they just send out these advertisements way ahead of time. These advertisements are for a show that's in a couple of months, and they've, this isn't a thing where we booked this ages ago and it was just one of those things. These venues weren't booked that long ago. The advertisements weren't created that long ago because they only just realized they were going to return to touring maybe last month or the month prior. So, again, I look at this and I say there's probably quite a bit of credence in that one. And the expectation, frankly, in the same vein of Becky Lynch, and then the same vein as Edge, which we'll touch on in a second, is that, of course, The Fiend would return. If you've got a healthy Fiend at home, a healthy Bray Wyatt, why would you have him off television? Why? And I suppose people are trying to wrap their heads around why he hasn't been brought back. Lord knows I'm with you there. I am absolutely with you there. I don't know. My concern is that the reason that Bray Wyatt has been kept off of television is because genuinely they don't know what to do with him. Because we have seen this in the past. I mean, Aleister Black was just released, and he said, look, when I was going to be off WWE television initially, Vince McMahon came up to me and basically said, look, we're not really sure what we need to do with you right now. Just sit at home for like a month or so. We'll figure it out. 1 month turned into 7. Now, obviously, Bray Wyatt is a bigger star than Aleister Black was in WWE, certainly in the minds of Vince McMahon, etc. He's still under contract with WWE. But I wouldn't be stunned. I really wouldn't be stunned if they're looking at The Fiend and they're looking at Bray Wyatt and they're going, I don't know what to do with him. Or, they're confused. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on with The Fiend or Bray Wyatt right now. What I will say, and I said it before when I spoke about Alexa Bliss on one of the WWE news videos we did this week, is I'm tired. I am so tired of the Firefly Funhouse gimmick. That whole children's presenter, I think, is jumped the shark now. I think it's outdated, frankly. I think it's done. I think it's finished. The Fiend character, there's still a lot of mileage in there. Now, they've done their best to try and ruin it. Back-to-back defeats against Randy Orton certainly hasn't done it any favour. Being burnt alive, spending all of that time off television, coming back just to lose again, that's damaging. I don't know how Bray Wyatt or The Fiend gets over in that situation, but that's what they did. We can't change that now. The Bray Wyatt character, the alter ego character of the Funhouse and Alexa's Playground, I think it's done. I think it's finished. I think Bray Wyatt needs to do something different. And it's a shame for him, because how many times does this guy need to reinvent himself and come up with a new creative, unique gimmick that just gets buried and shoved into the ground and just destroyed by bad writing? Creativity doesn't exist in WWE. It's a creatively stifling environment. Even if you come up with something that's great, something that's unique. I mean, look at Bray Wyatt right now. If you're sitting there at home and you're Bray Wyatt, you must be slightly furious. Really, you must be, because you go, I came up with this great idea. This dark, dystopian, alter ego, this Fiend character. It's dark. It's one of the most unique things you've seen on WWE television in a long time. Maybe this generation's version of The Undertaker. Who knows? And then on the other side of it, because we don't want to overexpose that, you've got this other side of his character where he's like a children's TV presenter, but he's warped in his own mind, and it's creepy, but it's funny at the same time. Oh, it's great. And instead, what do? They give the gimmick to someone else. They get someone to come into that universe, Alexa Bliss. I mean, completely, reinvented really her career, because, again, the Alexa Bliss of sort of 2017, 2018 was not the Alexa Bliss of 2020. It really wasn't. So Alexa Bliss coming in, giving her career a massive shot in the arm. And what's happened now? Bray Wyatt's at home, and Alexa Bliss is using his gimmick on TV. If I'm Bray Wyatt, I'm sitting at home going, wait a minute, what happened? What happened? It's got to be frustrating. And again, I do think there is something we don't know what's going on here, but maybe this is just a simple of a case of the creative team. They don't know what to do with Bray Wyatt. I wouldn't be surprised. I really would not be surprised if that was the case. Now, speaking of returns as well, the company has WWE Hall of Famer Edge booked for more dates on the summer tour. Now, it was noted before that Edge was advertised to return on the July 16 episode of SmackDown. Of course, that's the first ever WWE show to have live fans return to it in the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. That SmackDown. Edge is advertised to appear, which, of course, is WWE's first stop on their return to touring. It was also reported this week that Edge is scheduled to wrestle a match at SummerSlam as a babyface as part of the SmackDown roster, but WWE has now Edge booked for the following events this summer. SmackDown, as I mentioned, Friday 16 in the Toyota Center in Houston. SmackDown on Friday, July 30th at the Target Center in Minneapolis. Friday, August 6th, SmackDown in Amalie Arena in Tampa Bay, Florida. A Super Show live event on Saturday, August 14 at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. SmackDown Friday, August 20 at the Phoenix Suns Arena in Phoenix, Arizona. SmackDown Friday, August 27 at the Simmons Bank Arena in North Little Rock, Arkansas. And SmackDown Friday, September 3rd at the ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena in Jacksonville, Florida. So Edge is fully booked up for the summer, and obviously Edge is going to be returning to WWE programming as well, as I mentioned, as he should, as The Fiend should, as Becky Lynch should. Once you've got to start selling tickets, you've got to start loading up those shows with stars. So it makes a lot of sense there when it comes to those people returning. Now, this is a really interesting story, isn't it? Because this is something that broke about an hour or so before SmackDown went on the air last night, and that was top NXT superstars were backstage for last night's SmackDown on Fox taping at the Youngling Center in Tampa. Now, initially, there was a bit of confusion because people thought, wait a minute, Karrion Kross and Bronson Reed, are they going to debut on SmackDown last night? Because those were the names that were backstage. But in reality, they were there to work dark matches for the officials at that show. Now, Karrion Kross and Scarlett were backstage for the show. Now that we know that the NXT North American champion Bronson Reed was also backstage for SmackDown as well. That's according to F4W Online. The story was first broken by PW Insider. Fightful Select also reported on this. It was a big story last night. Now, Reed and Kross were brought into SmackDown to work dark matches as a way for officials to get a better look at them. Now, there's no word yet on who they wrestled. We do actually have confirmation on that in a second, which I will touch on. It was reported earlier that there had been talk over the last week of calling Kross and Scarlett to the main roster. It remains to be seen if WWE officials are also considering a call-up for Bronson Reed. Now, of course, Karrion Kross just retained his NXT Championship over Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, Pete Dunne, and Johnny Gargano in a fatal five-way match at NXT TakeOver In Your House last Sunday. Now, Bronson Reed also retained his title at NXT TakeOver In Your House, teaming with NXT Tag Team Champions MSK in a winners take all match victory over Legado del Fantasma. So it's a fascinating story, and again, we do have some update on the dark matches themselves. Now, reportedly, Karrion Kross took on Dolph Ziggler in his dark match, while Bronson Reed faced Bobby Roode. So I think that says a lot about WWE, where they consider Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode, they are the benchmarks of younger guys coming in. Work with these guys. If you're any good, they'll tell you. Now, both matches were taped for evaluation. They will not be likely released to the public. It's interesting. The report also notes, and again, this is PW Insider reporting this, the report also notes that Kross and Scarlett would return next week, potentially to do a promo. No plans are known for Reed yet. Now, of course, this year's WWE Draft is expected to take place on August 30th, Monday Night Raw, and September 3rd edition of SmackDown. So WWE could possibly be getting an early look at NXT stars that might make the jump to the main roster later on this year. It's an interesting story. The reason I say it's an interesting story is because it does kind of make the Performance Center a bit redundant, or the NXT brand like a bit redundant. I mean, I get it. The NXT, they're doing the whole, they work on the NXT brand. I thought the whole point, and again, I thought the whole point of the Performance Center is that this stuff didn't really happen anymore. You didn't come up to the main roster and work a dark match before the show because you didn't need to. Because you could see them on NXT television. You could see them at the Performance Center. All of it you could do from the Performance Center. Triple H, he's got a live feed of the Performance Center from his office in Stamford, Connecticut. This feels very old school, doesn't it? Because this is what used to happen back in the day. Used to work developmental, whether that was FCW or Ohio Valley Wrestling or wherever. Used to work developmental, and then you'd get a call, go to TV, and before the TV event started, whether it was Raw, SmackDown, or whatever, you worked a dark match. The reason you worked a dark match is so that people backstage, whether it was Vince McMahon, whether it was John Laurinaitis, Jim Ross, Jim Cornette, whoever, Bruce Pritchard, whether it was whoever it was backstage, they could get a better look at you and they could say, okay, we want to do this with you. We want to see they can work well in the ring. They can work well with these opponents. They look good. They know where all this is. All that kind of stuff. They felt that they were ready for the main roster. The issue is that NXT, isn't that the purpose of NXT? Isn't that the purpose of the Performance Center? Again, it feels very odd. It feels very odd and very old school that they would say, okay, we want Karrion Kross to come up to the main roster. Let's call him to TV. He works a dark match against Dolph Ziggler. And then next week he's going to come back to cut a promo. It feels very strange, because couldn't you do that at the Performance Center? I don't know. Again, it was odd. It's an odd story. I think it's an indication as to where they're going to go. I know I've heard rumors and I've seen the reports by Dave Meltzer and the such saying, Kross is being fast-tracked for the main roster. That's nothing new. That is nothing new. That report talking about Karrion Kross being fast-tracked for the main roster goes back to when Karrion Kross first signed with WWE. All the way back at the start of last year in 2020. The plan for Kross was to spend a really, really short amount of time with NXT, possibly just 12 months or something like that, maybe even shorter. That was the plan. And he was going to have this really strong run in NXT. That's why he won the NXT Championship after having like 8 matches on the brand by beating Keith Lee. The plan was for him to be the NXT champion, possibly hold it until maybe WrestleMania time this year, and then be called up to the main roster. The problem is he suffered a shoulder injury. He hurt his shoulder against Keith Lee when he won the NXT Championship. That delayed things. But I think, obviously, those in WWE see Karrion Kross as a big player. And obviously, with talent being released and with the return to touring and just a complete refresh of WWE programming, whether it's sets, graphics, musics, new rosters, whatever, they're looking at stars from the NXT brand saying, look, we need new, we need something different. Different is Karrion Kross. Bronson Reed's an interesting one. I guess he's a big guy. Vince McMahon likes big guys. Certainly, it would hurt NXT. I mean, you've got your 2 top singles male champions there being called up to the main roster. I mean, that's a bit of a void. That is a bit of a void, but that's NXT. That's the NXT purpose, unfortunately. Triple H can say it's not developmental. Johnny Gargano can say it's not developmental, but it's still creating stars for Raw and SmackDown. So I guess Karrion Kross is expected to be on Raw, SmackDown very soon. Bronson Reed, I mean, who knows at this point, but Karrion Kross, I would suggest, is probably going to be on the main roster. I don't know if really by next month. Maybe it might be a case of after SummerSlam. He's got to drop the championship first. That would likely be an NXT takeover during SummerSlam weekend. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Of course, he shows up on the main roster with the NXT championship. It's happened before with the likes of Kevin Owens, so why couldn't it happen with Karrion Kross, right? Not out of the realm of possibility. Now, we've got some more matches announced for Hell in a Cell. that were confirmed last night on SmackDown. Cesaro versus Seth Rollins is now official for the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Of course, Rollins and Cesaro have been feuding all the way back since WrestleMania, and Cesaro recently returned to SmackDown after being put on the shelf by Seth Rollins. The second match confirmed for Hell in a Cell, it was already confirmed, but now we have an added stipulation, was that Bayley versus SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair will now take place inside Hell in a Cell. Last night's edition of SmackDown saw Belair challenge Bayley to meet her inside the cell. So there you go, 2 more matches. I mean, one match just changing slightly, but the Cesaro-Rollins one, I hope that's the end of the feud. Not that I haven't enjoyed it, but it's time. It's time. The first match was at WrestleMania. I know they didn't have the match at WrestleMania Backlash, but it's just that story, that feud continued at WrestleMania Backlash after the match against Roman Reigns. It's done. It's done. Let's move on. Let's do something else, because I think a lot of people were tired of it. I think they're teasing that Rollins could eventually face Roman Reigns. Whether or not that happens, time will only tell. I do like that Bayley and Bianca Belair is taking place inside of Hell in a Cell. I don't know if it necessarily justifies it, the feud, but I do like that we have a female Hell in a Cell match, because the female Hell in a Cell matches throughout history have been very, very good. Very good. Is it the first one without Sasha Banks? Who's to say she doesn't show up during it? I think that's a possibility as well. So that's interesting for Sunday night, for tomorrow night. Some interesting news when it comes to WWE, and obviously they're encouraging their talents getting vaccinated. This is an interesting story here, especially considering obviously they're going to be returning to touring next month. Now, most of the wrestlers in WWE, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, NXT have reportedly received the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, WWE officials have strongly encouraged talents to get vaccinated. This is according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Now, while most talents have received the coronavirus vaccine, there are still some who have not had the vaccine because they don't want it. And word is that they believe the company cannot force them to get it. Now, of course, WWE superstars have also participated in PSA videos to encourage other people to get vaccinated. The company has encouraged the vaccine in other ways, including joining 12 other sports leagues to support the Ad Council's It's Up to You campaign, and having Drew McIntyre interview Dr. Francis Collins, director of the National Institute of Health, about common vaccine questions on the WWE YouTube channel. So I think, obviously, very good for WWE to encourage their talents to get vaccinated. If you haven't already, get vaccinated. That's the way out of all of this. We've seen this recently. We've seen it with, as I mentioned, WWE's return to touring, having fans back inside the arenas. A lot of fans over here in the UK and around the world, across Europe, and we're watching the European Championships, having fans back inside stadiums, inside arenas. The way we get back to that is by herd immunity through the vaccination process. That's how we get there. That's how we get there. And I know there is a lot of misinformation out there, and I know there's some people that don't believe it and all that kind of stuff, but eventually it's going to get a point that WWE, look, they can't force the talents to get it. They can't. But I think they probably can say, look, if you don't get it, then maybe, again, it depends. The law is going to be really grey around this, I think, but it's going to be a situation, because we are having this case, I think, certainly over here in the UK. I know some care homes have essentially said to their workers, look, if you don't get vaccinated, we can't keep you employed. And we might get to a point where there is going to be a thing like vaccination passports and all that kind of stuff. To attend these events, you have to prove you've been vaccinated. I just watched a match between France and Hungary at the European Championships, whereby it was a crowd full of people in Hungary, but the only way to get in that stadium is to prove that they had been vaccinated recently. So get vaccinated. I mean, I've got my first shot tomorrow, and then I've got to do a Hell in a Cell watch along and live stream, and that's going to be incredibly fun. But definitely, get vaccinated. It's the way out of this, and it's good to hear that WWE, after really dragging their heels at the start of the pandemic, we can't forget about that. They certainly did drag their heels, but after dragging their heels at the start of the pandemic, they're finally actually doing something. So that's encouraging to see. SmackDown last night. Let's go back to SmackDown. Shinsuke Nakamura is the one true king of WWE after defeating King Corbin last night. In what was dubbed the Battle of the Crown, Shinsuke Nakamura defeated King Corbin, and after the match, King Corbin was furious. Well, I guess just Baron Corbin was furious in the ring, whilst Shinsuke Nakamura celebrated with Rick Boogs as the new king of WWE. I would have really been excited about this match had we not seen it 5 times already. This was I think this was the 5th time we had seen this match on SmackDown in 5 weeks, so I didn't care about it at all. I do think it opens up the possibility of a King of the Ring tournament. I think that's where this is going. Plus the recent reports about WWE wanting to do more themed shows and themed events, whether that's King of the Ring, whether that's, we'll touch on Raw Roulette in a second, Viewer's Choice, Cyber Sunday, etc. I think this is the beginning of the King of the Ring tournament returning, and maybe King Corbin trying to get his crown back. as far as Nakamura, I'm happy for Nakamura to be doing something. I think, one, I'm happy for Nakamura to be calling himself the king of WWE in the same way he's calling himself the king of Strong Style and walking around with the crown on his head. That's fine. What I don't want is what WWE tends to do when you win the King of the Ring, is that suddenly you have to wear the crown, you have to carry the scepter, you have to wear a cape, and suddenly you have to act all royal, and you have to be carried to the ring, you have to have a music change, because that's what you have to do. That gimmick is so outdated. That is so outdated. And I know, certainly at the moment, WWE is bringing back outdated gimmicks. Look at Commander Aziz. Oh, yeah, I've got this Nigerian guy, so I must have a military general as the backup. Come on. What's this, 1985? And it's kind of the same when it comes to the King of the Ring gimmick. I love the King of the Ring tournament, but you don't need to wear the crown and act like you are the Queen of England afterwards. You don't. You can just be. Why can't you just be the best? Why can't you just say, look, I won the tournament. I'm the best wrestler in the WWE. Because that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter in the eyes of Vince McMahon. That's the problem there. That's ultimately the problem. We have some interesting news about Piper Niven. I say interesting, bad news. It looks like WWE is indeed moving forward with the Doudrop name for Piper Niven. Now, it was previously noted that, of course, Piper Niven made her Raw debut this past week as the muscle for Eve Marie. Now, the announcers during her debut acted like they had never seen Piper Niven in their life. Who is she? Who is she? We've never seen her before. Who is this person? Who is? I really wanted someone to say like NXT UK, and they go, "What's that? NXT? What? Suddenly, these announcers turned into idiots with the memories of a goldfish. Oh, we've never seen Piper Niven before. Oh. I just wait for the day that Walter shows up on Monday Night Raw and they go, who's that guy? What championships he's holding? Who are you? I mean, honestly, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Now, it was previously reported that WWE was considering Doudrop or Doudrop with a space in between as the new name for Piper Niven. Well, in an update, WWE has filed to trademark the Doudrop name on June 16. This indicates that they are indeed moving forward with that as Piper Niven's new name. Doudrop is a terrible name. It's an awful name. It's rubbish. WWE's recent records of coming up with names of talents are, awful. Honestly, awful. The European Championship's on right now. If a penalty taker had the record of taking penalties that WWE does in terms of getting good names for their talents, you would never have them on penalty duty ever again. Their records, it's awful. It's terrible. The Viking Experience, Doudrop. The list could go on and on. All of Retribution, right? Mace, Teabag, Reckoning, Anger, Rage. I might just be doing Greed, the 7 Deadly Sins at this point. It's they're just awful. They are awful at making up names, and Doudrop is the latest name. And I know some people will say, well, eventually you'll get over it. Well, yeah, but eventually people will move on. It doesn't make the name any good. People still talk about the Red Rooster to this day because the name sucks. People still talk about, the Viking Experience as a terrible name to this day because the name sucks. People still talk about Retribution. The name sucked. And guess what? Retribution doesn't exist anymore. It wasn't just because of the names, but it didn't help the situation at all, did it? So, Doudrop, what a terrible name. I spoke about Raw Roulette and themed events. Well, Raw Roulette looks to be returning at some point this year. It was noted how WWE is considering more themed shows for late 2021 and early 2022. That means specials like Old School Raw, King of the Ring, and Viewer's Choice Raw are likely to return. Now, in an update, Andrew Zarian of the Matman podcast has reported that Raw Roulette is more likely to happen in 2021. He also noted that the King of the Ring is expected for this year, as I touched on about Shinsuke Nakamura. Now, of course, the first ever Raw Roulette show was held on October 7, 2002 in Las Vegas. I remember this show very, very well because I thought it was incredible. I really did. It was a lot of fun. Since then, there have been 5 other Raw Roulette specials, with the last one taking place on January 28, 2013, also in Vegas. Raw Roulette features matches where the stipulations are decided on by the spin of the wheel. So hopefully this episode of Raw returns, because I really did like Raw Roulette. I did. I don't know if it can save Raw. I don't think just having a roulette wheel saves Raw. There's far more bigger issues. But if it makes a show worth watching, and if it gives you a reason to tune in, then go for it, WWE. Go for it. It's proven to work for AEW when they've done these TV specials. To be honest, there are so many episodes of Dynamite that aren't AEW Dynamite regular episodes. It's kind of funny, but maybe that's what Raw and SmackDown need to do, because otherwise, certainly Raw, unwatchable. Why bother watching? Some NXT news briefly, and then we'll wrap things up. Ridge Holland, of course, he had an awful injury last year. but he's reportedly working on getting medically cleared to return to the ring and is receiving praise for his attitude. Now, Holland has been out of action since suffering multiple leg injuries in what he called a freak accident during the October 7 NXT episode. Now, Holland, who suffered the injuries while catching then NXT Tag Team Champion Oney Lorcan, underwent surgery the next day. WWE announced he'd suffered a left ankle dislocation and fracture, a right knee patella dislocation, and a patella tendon rupture. The knee dislocation was put back into place at ringside, and the ankle dislocation was put back into place at the emergency room, according to WWE's announcement at the time. Holland reportedly began inpatient rehab on both of his legs the following week. Now, in an update, Holland has been at the Performance Center daily as of late, working hard to rehab his leg and getting closer to being medically cleared for an in-ring return. This is according to PW Insider. It was noted that over the last several weeks, Holland has thrown himself into rehab in a major way and has been praised for the great attitude he's showing despite the injuries he suffered last year. It was reported last year that Holland had impressed WWE officials and that some had really high hopes for his future. One report said they saw him as the next big thing for the company, and he was working in a top storyline at the time, being hired by Pat McAfee to attack Adam Cole at NXT TakeOver 31 last year. Now, there's no word yet on what Ridge Holland will be doing when he returns to the company, but McAfee, of course, has since moved on to being part of the SmackDown announce team. And this is such great news because the injury last year, if you watch it back and him just being at ringside, it was horrible. And then you heard about the injuries. And again, a guy that was really in the middle of a big push, WWE officials really see something in him. And again, as a fellow Brit, you feel this even more. But just horrible, horrible injuries. So it's great to hear that he's on the mend and throwing himself into rehab, and he should be back at some point and hopefully be better than ever. Finally, I want to talk about Shawn Michaels because this story blew my mind. It really blew my mind. Because WWE NXT TV entrances were reportedly cut back on earlier this year due to a theory on fans switching the channel to AEW Dynamite. While this is no longer an issue for NXT, of course, since they moved to Tuesday nights, the Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels, who of course works as an NXT producer, felt that long ring entrances gave viewers more time to check out AEW. This is one of the reasons for NXT entrances being cut back on. Now, it doesn't stop there. The story going around WWE is that Shawn's wife, Rebecca, was watching NXT and reportedly told him that she thought the ring entrances were too long and giving people too much time to switch channels. Michaels reportedly brought that up to Triple H, and that contributed to the change being made. There's also the idea of cutting back on ring entrances as a way to have more time for in-ring action and angles. I find this story, to be honest, incredible. I honestly find that absolutely incredible. Shawn Michaels, one of the most extravagant, over-the-top superstars in WWE history. Bear in mind, a guy that has one of the most over-the-top and extravagant entrances, certainly in his generation, right? Coming out to the ring, the pyro in the ring, the pose. The guy came down on a zip line at WrestleMania 12. He's got one of the most over-the-top entrances of all time. And his theory is that, your entrance is too long. People are going to change the channel to AEW Dynamite. If an entrance is good, and it's compelling, then surely the viewer would be engaged. Having someone just walk to the ring very quickly, there's no steam, there's no theatrics, there's no buzz to that. You're in sports entertainment. Vince McMahon likes to call it sports entertainment all the time. What's entertaining about someone just walking to the ring? It's all right when Steve Austin does it and The Rock does it, but that's because that's Steve Austin and The Rock. They're over. When you're on a brand like NXT, when you're on a show like NXT, and these talents aren't over, they're not well known to the audience at home, you have to give the audience a reason to care about them. Certainly when you debut a new star, whether it's Karrion Kross or whatever, you look at the entrance and go, that's interesting. Your eyes don't leave the screen. The Fiend's Bray Wyatt, his first entrance at SummerSlam in 2019, it was super, super long, but everyone was focused on it. They didn't turn away because it was a good entrance. At no point do you watch a Fiend entrance and you go, I'm going to turn it off. No. The Undertaker has one of the longest entrances in WWE history. It took him about 20 minutes to walk to the ring. But because of who he was and how he carried himself and the fire and the smoke and the purple light and all that kind of stuff, you didn't look away because you felt if I look away, I might miss something. So that theory of, well, your entrance is too long, I'm going to change the channel, I disagree. I totally disagree. And I'm not going to criticize, Shawn Michaels' wife or anything like that because I think that's unfair. I think sometimes us as pro wrestling fans, we get caught in a pro wrestling bubble. We get in a sense of groupthink, essentially, and that sometimes it's good to have an outsider's perspective, but I disagree on this one. I really do. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you haven't enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.